Hi, my name's Chris Elliston. I'm a researcher at the Institute for Design Informatics at the University of Edinburgh. I'm very sorry that I can't be there with you in person for the conference, but I hope this video will give you a good introduction to the pictorial that I'm presenting on behalf of my co-authors Vicky Jones, Ingi Helgeson, Lizzie Abernethy and Will Brown. This project is called Fest Forward, and this is Fest Forward. It's a fictional local cultural magazine set in Edinburgh in 2030. And what the project was all about in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, when many arts venues and performances moved online, and we had this huge pivot to digital. And at the same time, the arts sector suffered real kind of precarity and uncertainty about its future. And what we wanted to have was conversations looking to the longer term about what the role of digital technologies would be in this sector, and in particular how that would intersect with the equity and sustainability of performing arts. So we produced this magazine as a way to stimulate those conversations, and we did so using quite participatory methods. There's more in the paper about this, but I'll briefly talk through some of the mechanics of how we made this, and then I'll introduce the magazine, and then I'll say a little bit about some of the key arguments of this pictorial. So we began with a series of interviews with people working in the sector, understanding their experiences of pivoting to digital and using digital technologies, and also their concerns about the equity and sustainability of the sector, especially in our local context of Edinburgh in the UK. Those interviews, through sort of reflecting on those, developing some themes and an ideation process, we developed a series of prototypes. These are kind of provocative concepts and ideas, and that could be summarised in small imagery or adverts, for example. And these were a way of kind of capturing some of the key concerns and sort of coming up with potential ideas or avenues to explore further with participants. We took these into a series of online and in-person workshops themed around different topics, and what we asked our participants to do was to imagine that you were a journalist or an editor working for this Fest Forward magazine, and that these prototypes were the kind of news stories of the day, and what kind of headlines would you envisage coming up with. And this is a technique that's been used in a lot of design futuring contexts, and it's very good for getting new audiences to express their kind of thoughts or concerns or ideas around particular technologies or concepts. We then took all of this material and brought it together through writing a series of articles and finalising a set of imagery and putting this together as a realistic cultural magazine. We then produced, we got a lot of feedback and proofed everything, and we produced more than 500 copies of this magazine, and we've been using them subsequently at various public and events and enactments in order to continue to foster these conversations in the sector. So you can download the magazine at festforward.org. It's also available as supplementary material via the ACM library. I'm going to very quickly skip through it now just to give you a sense of what's in there, and then I'm going to say a little bit more about some of the arguments in the pictorial. So yes, we set this up very much to kind of look and feel like what you'd expect from this sort of sector-specific kind of niche cultural magazine. We had news articles, adverts, kind of reflective pieces. This one's about dynamic pricing of tickets. We had things like top tens, reader awards. We had sort of long-form interviews. And really using different formats to try and speculate in slightly different ways. This one here, for example, envisages a cultural data essentials course that might be valuable for the sector. We have a number, you can see sort of some of these which are longer form, and some of these are just snippets, just little classified ads, as a really nice way of pulling in a little idea that might have come out of one of the workshops. And so that's the magazine. It's 24 pages, it was printed in B5, and this physical copy is really a lovely thing for us to share with people. In the pictorial, what we really have been reflecting on is how we made this magazine, and we've annotated the prototypes and the articles themselves. And here's an example of that. So we had this idea around a festival's currency, and reflecting on the ease with which people can create new digital currencies now. These are some of the headlines produced during the during the workshop. So this one here, limited edition festival currency cards, get your exclusive 2030 edition while you can. This came from an idea of the kind of potential collectability of some of these materials. And this actually finally became one of the key ideas in this advert here, about a kind of special selection of these cards that you could use. Again, in the pictorial, what we start doing here on the side is thinking about what kinds of world building does this prototype, does this design fiction let us do. It asks questions, for example, about the kinds of communities and cultures that might exist around these technologies. Or we might ask economically, how would this currency be backed? Why would people have confidence or faith in its sustained value? What would it mean for venues and performers to manage payments in multiple currencies? So the strength of this as a piece of design fiction and design futuring is the extent to which it lets people do this kind of world building. So as I said in the pictorial, we use annotations as prompts and questions, as leads for the reader to undertake this further world building. In this context, with pre-ChatGPT and the kind of explosion of these the explosion of popularity in these systems, we were thinking about what a cultural AI would look like and what it would be trained on, and how this would be considered creative or not, and how different creators would aim to employ it in their practices. And the world building annotations here sort of reflect some of the themes and ideas that came out in the article and the workshops. So what we're trying to do here is reflect on what's the ongoing meaning and lives of these design futuring artifacts, not just in the project itself or in the subsequent output, but in the way in which they can be continuously used and reflected upon by different audiences. And we're also concerned within the pictorial, how is it that these design futuring artifacts actually embody and produce knowledge, which is something that we expect of many other design research outputs. And we're particularly drawn to Kozubayev et al.'s paper on expanding modes of reflection and design futuring, and they pose this question around how could design futuring research become more interoperable? How could we encourage practices of building upon each other's work in more than just shared methodology? How might researchers share aspects of speculation and have a sense of building up knowledge about anticipated phenomena or particular near-future technologies? And in the pictorial, we argue that one response to that is to think about world-building operating as a form of intermediate-level knowledge. This comes from Hook and Lojgren's Strong Concepts paper, where they describe the idea of lots of design work existing as ultimate particulars and intermediate level knowledge helping connect that to wider theory. And so we might think here as design fiction artifacts being very particular, and what we're doing through world building is to abstract or illuminate, use them to abstract or illuminate present or future concerns around this context or issue. And what that implies is that we should employ and judge design futuring and fictions by the world building that they enable. It's not just, is this a good idea? But in this context here, this is an interview with a fictional festival data custodian, an important new role that might help festivals collectively manage their data better. The question is, what kinds of world building does this allow different audiences to do? What kinds of questions does it help them ask of the way they currently manage data, or the way that these roles currently exist or don't yet exist? And in terms of participatory design futuring, it's not just a case of academics building on each other's work, but enabling world building by different audiences. And we should be asking who can build worlds with this, for whom, and to what ends, and so on. So, in conclusion, please download the magazine, share it with venues, artists, performers, and please envision your own headlines and commentary and world building, and build new worlds. And that's really the encouragement we want to give you from this pictorial. Thanks very much for your time. I'd just like to thank again my co-authors and Creative Informatics who funded this work.